Fellow Toastmasters, how many of you have ever wondered what leadership is? I know I have. We've seen many workshops, we've read many books on what leadership's about. Whether you're a quiet leader, a loud leader, democratic leader, it doesn't matter. This workshop is about 5 steps that are going to ensure no matter what leader you are, you will be an effective leader, but most of all, you'll be a leader rock star. How many of you would love to be a leader rock star? You may even be asking, what is a leader rock star? It's someone that leads in such a positive, successful way. And I know all of us thrive to be successful leaders. I know for most of us, when we joined Toastmasters, we didn't join Toastmasters to become effective leaders. We joined Toastmasters to become an effective communicator. But in the process, we learned that communication and leadership go hand in hand. You can't succeed just with one. You need both to be successful. And those are actually, communication is one of the 5 steps that I'm going to go over. And you may be asking, where in the world did you get these 5 steps? Well, I got it from Pathways, level 2. And when I saw these 5 steps, I said, this is it. This is the Bible for me. This is how I'm going to be successful as a leader. And since I've used these 5 steps, I've had great success. And I know that you have the capability of being an effective leader. You have the capability of being a leader rock star. I want everyone that is following your lead to say, I want to be a leader like that. Because more than ever, with everything going on, we need effective leaders. I know there's been many times you've looked at leaders, managers, and you said, how in the world did this person become a leader? Well, today, I'm going to give you the 5 steps to ensure that you're not one of those leaders that people talk about and say, I never want to work for that person. I never want that person to lead me in any group. I want people to say, that person is an effective leader. That person is a leader rock star. So we're going to kick it off with step 1. And step 1 is the most important step out of all of them. If there's any advice I can give you, it's if you don't follow step 1, there's no way you can succeed in all the other steps. Step 1 is the most important one. It's the one that people forget about the most, but it's the most important one. If you use step 1, you're going to be successful right from the get-go. And I know all of you want to be successful as leaders. So let's go over step 1. What is step 1? Step 1 is leading by example. Let me repeat that so that you're saying leading by example. How many of you have ever worked at a company where you looked at the manager, you looked at the supervisor, you said, this person is a leader? How in the world did they get that position? I've had many bad managers. I've had many bad supervisors. And I always ask myself that burning question. How in the world did they get that position? They don't lead by example. They're not a good example to follow. Let me give you an example. I worked for this one CPA firm a few years ago. And the partner that hired me, one of the partners, he told me, you need to show up at 8 a.m. and it's going to be 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. I said, cool, no problem. And I'm the type of person, I show up early. When I know I have to be somewhere, I show up early. But I noticed that right from the get-go, this supervisor, this partner, wouldn't show up until 10 o'clock, 10:30. Sometimes they would show up not until noon. And I'm thinking, this person doesn't lead by example. And often my coworkers would complain about this person not being there because it was difficult to ask them a question if they weren't there. You have to email him, and sometimes he wouldn't respond to his emails. You have to text him, and sometimes he wouldn't respond to his text. It was a nightmare. And in county, you definitely need communication. but he was never there. The only time he ever showed up on time, and I'm serious here, was when he fired someone. He came early to fire someone. That was it. That's the only time he showed up. Now, this is a person that made a lot of money within the company. They were a partner. But do you think they were an effective leader? Do you think people took them seriously? No, they didn't, because they didn't lead by example. They would tell you what to do, but they wouldn't do it themselves. What separates a leader rock star from an average leader is this: they lead by example. They have the belief that they won't tell you something that they wouldn't do themselves. I always inspire to lead by example, because I believe if I'm telling someone to do something and I'm not doing it myself, then I'm not being a good example, especially in Toastmasters. If you're telling, especially new members, to achieve an educational award, to log into Pathways, and then you're not logged into Pathways, you're not achieving an educational award, are you really being a good example? No. I'll never forget this. A few years ago in District 3, we had Pathways ambassadors, Pathways guides. When Pathways came into play, the district decided to have Pathways ambassadors and guides together, going around to 10 clubs promoting Pathways, talking about how to log in, how many levels you would have to achieve to complete a path. You had all these things that we had to go over. We had to be motivators for Pathways. Well, there was one ambassador who went around for a year promoting Pathways. And we found out later they had never even bothered to log into Pathways. They weren't even registered. They had never bothered to even try to complete a level. And when we found out, and the clubs that she went to found out, do you think that they thought of her as a good leader, as an effective leader, as a leader rock star? No. You have to lead by example. That's where it all starts. If you're not leading by example, if you're telling your team to do something and then you're not doing it yourself, then you're not being an effective leader. There are many leaders out there, but very few of them are effective. Very few of them are leader rock stars. That's what made people like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. special, was he just didn't tell people to march. He was there marching with them. He was there getting arrested along with them. Abraham Lincoln, he led by example. He just didn't tell people what to do. He believed in leading by example. He just didn't tell people to treat African Americans with respect. He treated them with respect. You see, that's what it's about. It's about leading by example. When I think of this, I think of the World Wrestling Entertainment chairman, Vince McMahon. Of course, he runs an $8 billion company with many pro wrestlers. And many of his wrestlers have said he will not ask them to do something that he wouldn't do himself. He leads by example. And you may not think this is an example, but a lot of those wrestlers have to be in shape. They're athletes. Well, when Vince McMahon isn't running the WWE, what is he doing? He's working out. And for a 76-year-old man, he's pretty buff because he works out. See, that's leading by example. He's not going to tell his wrestlers to be in shape and then he's not in shape. He's not going to tell his wrestlers to go up on a ladder and then fall and not do it himself. He's done it himself before. That's leading by example. You get better results when you lead by example. That's what makes Bill Gates great. That's what makes Warren Buffett great. They lead by example. You want to be a leader, rock star? It starts with step one. If you can't conquer step one, if you can't lead by example, then you're not going to be an effective leader. All the other steps are important, but number one is the most important one. Lead by example. So now we're going to move on to step two. What is step two? Step two is communication. Have you ever heard the expression communication is the key to success? I've heard it many times, and it's so true. Good leaders will communicate with their team as often as possible. It's so simple with everything we have. We have email, we have Twitter, we have Facebook, we have our cell phone, we could text people, we could call people. We have all these technology formats to help us communicate. Yet you'd be surprised how many leaders are out there who are managing, supervising, who don't bother to communicate with their team, letting them know what's going on. Very few of them. I'll give you an example. At this same CPA firm I worked for, I was working with this one client, and my job was to do their finances. They would send me their bank statements, their financial statements, the receipts, and monthly I'd be doing their finances. And they would normally have it in within the first week of the month, and I would have it done within a week. Well, 7 days go by, 1 month, and I haven't received their statements. And I'm a little worried. I'm like, well, wait a minute, where's their statements? I need their statements. I can't do the job without their statements, right? So I email them. I say, hey, where's your statements? I get an email from their account saying, oh, you didn't hear, Randy? We're no longer receiving services from you. Yeah, we found this other CPA firm that is a lot less. But they praised me. They said, hey, you did a great job. We appreciate everything you did. We just went with this CPA firm because they're less expensive. They had told the partners, but the partners never bothered to tell me about this. So here I am waiting, twiddling my thumbs, trying to figure out, well, wait a minute, what's going on here? I need to do the work, and I can't do it if I don't have their statements. Well, it turns out they were no longer receiving services. That is not good leadership. That is not communicating in an effective way. And that happens all the time in business. People underestimate how crucial, how vital it is to communicate with your team, letting them know, hey, this is what's going on. Letting them know, hey, I care. How are you doing? Those little things, when you do those, you get great results. Communication is a key to success. What made Dr. King special as a leader was his ability to communicate. And I'm not talking about giving well-organized, effective speeches. I'm talking about communicating with his team, letting them know what was going on a continuous basis. And you had to, because if you didn't, people could die. So it was very crucial that communication played a big part in making sure that people stayed alive and kept fighting for the cause of having everyone have equal rights. Same thing with Abraham Lincoln. Back then, what he was doing wasn't popular. Having a slave was like having a car back then. It was very common. You had a slave named Tom. So back then, what he was doing was very controversial. And he had to communicate to his team, letting them know, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is my plan. This is plan A. If plan A doesn't work, this is plan B. This is plan C. You have to communicate all the time. If you don't communicate as a leader, you could be missing the boat. It's very important. That's what makes Bill Gates successful, communicating with his team. And he has a huge team. He has a huge team in Microsoft. But not only that, he's doing other projects, doing projects that are helping the world. He has to communicate on a continuous basis. Communication is the key to success. If you look at, for example, what made Phil Jackson, an NBA legendary coach who won 11 championships, 6 with the Chicago Bulls and 5 with the Los Angeles Lakers. What made him successful, his ability to communicate with his players. Communication is the key to success. If you do not know how to communicate in an effective manner, then you are not going to be successful. Doing the little things like in Toastmasters, setting out the agenda, letting the members know, hey, what am I doing? And what are they doing? Are they going to be at the meeting? Letting them know that they have an idea. You're going to be odd counter, you're going to be grammarian, you're going to be Toastmaster, you're going to be general evaluator. It's important to let your club know what they're doing. I just emailed a vice president of education asking her, what am I doing? Now, I haven't received the agenda yet. I need to know what I'm doing. So that I don't go there and at the meetings and twiddling my thumbs trying to figure out what I'm doing. Communication is important, whether it's in Toastmasters, whether it's in life, whatever the case may be. You want to be an effective leader, communication is the key to success. Remember that. So that's step 2. Step 3. It's the one that we underestimate the most, but it's so true. Optimistic, being optimistic, looking at the glass half full instead of half empty. If you look at our society, we're dealing with so many things that are negative. COVID-19, inflation, gas prices going up, food prices going up, the economy, global warming. We're dealing with all these problems, and it's easy to be negative. It's easy to look at the glass half empty. But when you do that, you're not going to be effective as a leader. You're not. I see it all the time where managers will only call in their employees when they've done something wrong. I've worked for many companies where the only time you heard from the manager was when you did something wrong. Matter of fact, you didn't want to hear from the manager, because if you heard from the manager, it meant you were in trouble. They never called you in when you did something right, when you showed up early, when you went the extra mile. They only call you in when you do something wrong. Isn't that a little sad? And that's why you're seeing people not wanting to go back to work. It's not just because of COVID-19 and they're scared. It's because they have felt for years they haven't been treated with respect. They've gone the extra mile, but they haven't been recognized for it. Southwest Airlines, for example, makes it a point to have banquets each and every year, acknowledging their workers for a good job they've done. When you go to their company, it's like you're working for a family, not just a company. And that's the way it should be everywhere. But as a leader, you have the opportunity, whether it's in Toastmasters or whether you're a manager working at a company, you have an opportunity not only to inspire people, but to make people realize that they could be one day effective leader just like you, that they can be a leader rock star just like you. But it starts with you being optimistic, looking at the glass half full. What I love about Toastmasters, I don't know about you, is the sandwich method that we use. When we evaluate someone in their speech, we want to give them constructive criticism, as society called it. But we also want to point out their strengths. And the reason we want to point out their strengths, we want them to continue to use their strengths. But we also recognize that there's no such thing as a perfect speech. There's always areas that you can improve on. But there's a way to say things. If I evaluate someone, I say, your vocal variety sucks. I could barely hear you. But if I say, you have a well-organized speech, you had a great intro, great conclusion, but your vocal variety over here needs a little work. You need to use rate, pitch, tone. Which one sounds better? The evaluation, right? The second one, the Toastmaster method. And we can use that Toastmaster method not only in Toastmasters, but in society. When we're leading our kids, our grandkids, or when we're leading a group. Don't just look at the negativity that's going on. Look at what's going on from a positive point of view, and you'll get great results. Look at the glass half full. Take time to tell your team, hey, great job. Thank you for volunteering. I appreciate you. The other day, I had a coworker that told me that I appreciate you. And I enjoyed that. That made me feel good. They appreciate me. We don't hear that enough. I would like to see more companies not only call in their employees when they're doing something wrong, but call them in when they're doing something right. Reward them, acknowledge them, tell them, hey, great job. Give them a certificate. You'd be surprised, a certificate go a long ways. Having a certificate and telling them, hey, great job. Thank you for showing up on time. Thank you for going the extra mile. Goes a long way. If we use that method, we're going to be successful as leaders. That was the key to Dr. King's success, acknowledging people. Even though he's the one that got credit, he couldn't have done it alone. Nobody can. It's amazing that quote that Hillary Clinton said, it takes a village. A lot of people make fun of it, but it's so true. It takes a village. No one can do it alone. I don't care how great you are. I don't care how smart you are. I don't care how good looking you are. You cannot do it alone. Nobody can. You have to have a team. And if you're optimistic, you'll get great results. Look at the glass half full. Stop looking at the glass half empty, and you'll get great results. You will be the effective leader that you're meant to be, and you'll be a leader rock star that you were meant to be. So now I want to talk about step 4. Step 4 is important. It really is. And that's one that I struggle with personally. And I think most people do, because we like to think we're smart and we know it all. And it's my way or the highway, and I'm right and you're wrong. But step 4 is being open-minded to new ideas. It's easy to start doing things a certain way and say, nope, I refuse to change. I refuse to adjust. But if you look at the successful leaders like Bill Gates, like Warren Buffett, the key to their success is that they're open-minded to new ideas. They're not stuck with the same old idea. They realize that as time goes on, technology is going to advance. Things are going to change. Let me give you an example. We just celebrated about 6 months ago, 9/11, the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And actually, one of the news stations pointed this out, and I didn't think about it until they mentioned it. 20 years ago, in 2001, we didn't have Facebook. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have Twitter. We had cell phones, but they weren't as advanced as they are now, where you can take a picture of yourself, you can text, you can listen to music, you can do all types of things with your cell phone now. Think about it. In the last 20 years, things have changed. We have the ability to communicate like never before with our family members, our loved ones, and the people that we're leading. That's why I say step 2, communication is key to success. There's no excuse why we cannot communicate when we have all this technology. We didn't even have Zoom back then. Now we do. We have the ability to communicate. But more importantly, we have the ability to be open-minded. And I think of myself with this. Like I said, this is one that I'm not going to lie, I struggle with personally. This is one that I need to work on. I think I'm getting better, though. 2 years ago, when COVID-19 came into play, I was scared like a lot of people about COVID-19. But I was also a little disappointed because I knew what was going to happen. And sure enough, it happened. We had to stop meeting in person, had to start meeting on this technology format called Zoom. And I didn't want to do it. I was like, I speak better in person. I want to speak in person. I want to see people live and in person. I don't want to have to speak on Zoom. I'm horrible with technology. So I remember emailing the president of Competitive Edge and telling her, look, I'm not going to be able to continue as vice president of education. Well, the next day I get a call from the vice president of membership, not the president, but the vice president of membership. And she says, what in the world are you doing? And I said, what do you mean? Said, I hear you're going to quit Toastmasters over Zoom. And she told me, she said, you're a leader. You need to finish this year out. But more importantly, you need to go on Zoom. I know it's scary, but you can do it, Randy. And if it hadn't been for her, I don't know if I would have stayed in Toastmasters. I probably would have quit, saying, I don't want to be a part of Zoom. I don't want to do Zoom. Are you kidding? No way. But I was determined at that point when she taught to me to learn this. I had to get a new cell phone so I could be able to log in Zoom. I had to get a laptop, and I had to get internet. I didn't have internet in my home. Never needed it before. and it was an adjustment. And I'll never forget my first speech on Zoom was actually because I didn't have internet yet. I actually had to give it in my car. You imagine having to give a speech in your car? But that was me. And I was terrified. I forgot what it was like to be terrified to give a speech, because when you start giving speeches a certain way, live in person, you start to get comfortable. Start to say, I can do this. It's a piece of cake. But when I had to speak on Zoom, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I was scared. I was sweating. I was nervous. And everyone could feel that. But they were so positive, saying, Randy, you can do it. And the point is of that story is tell you, I wasn't open-minded at first. Just imagine if I had continued saying, no, I'm not going to speak on Zoom. I'm never going to give it a shot. I wouldn't be here today giving this speech. I wouldn't have the opportunities of seeing other clubs from all over the world, because every district does things different. I've had an opportunity to be a district leader in another district, seeing how they do things. And it wouldn't happen if it hadn't been for Zoom. So yes, there's some downfall when it comes to this format. I still want to see people's beautiful faces live and in person. But I also recognize that this is giving me an opportunity that I wouldn't have had. And now I'm more open-minded to not just Zoom, not just technology, but to ideas, because I realize that the most effective leaders that we've had in our lifetime have been open-minded to new ideas. When I think of someone that was open-minded to new ideas, I think of President Bill Clinton. Matter of fact, he got criticized from his own party for listening to the Republicans and doing Republican things as well as Democratic things. But that's what made him an effective leader. That's what made him successful as president. See, when you're open-minded, when you're willing to listen to your team with new ideas, you get great results. You do. It's when you're closed-minded. I'll never forget this. About 6 months ago, I emailed my managers about new ideas, how we can make more money, how the employees there can not only make a salary, but can make commission as well, because I had a job that you got paid salary and commission. It was a sales job. But nevertheless, I emailed these managers and I never got one response, not one email, not one call. At least if I had gone, hey, no way, we're going to do things our way, at least it would have been a response. But I didn't even get a response because they weren't open-minded to new ideas. When you would bring up an idea to me, no, we're going to do it this way. This is the way we're going to do it. Too bad, so sad. If you don't like it, there's the door. You've heard that expression, right? There's the door if you don't like what we're doing here. When you're open-minded to new ideas, you get great results. But what ended up happening was, because they were closed-minded, because they wanted to do things their way, because they were stubborn, we eventually lost a contract. And I believe that was one of the reasons. We weren't open-minded. We weren't willing to adjust. And if you're not willing to adjust as a leader, then you're not going to be effective. You're not going to be that leader rock star. Be open-minded to new ideas. Listen to your team. Remember, you have the ability to motivate these people, to make them leader rock stars. And you can't do it if you're not open-minded. If all you care about is yourself, is your own needs, you're not going to succeed. Eventually it comes and bites you in the butt. It does. That's just the truth. So step 4, being open-minded. Now we're going to move on to the final step. Step 5. What is step 5? It's part of our core values here in Toastmasters. Integrity. Right now, people are dying for leaders that have integrity, that are willing to do the right thing all the time, even if it's not the most popular thing to do. And when I think of integrity, I'm always astonished that it's gotten to the point where leaders are breaking the rules on purpose. And they're not even embarrassed about it. At least back then when they broke the rules, they tried to hide it. They were a little embarrassed when they were caught. Now it's like, yeah, I'm breaking the rules. I don't like the rules, so I'm breaking them. If you don't like it, too bad, so sad. It's astonishing to me what has happened. People are ready for effective leaders. They're ready for leader rock stars, but most of all, they're ready for leaders that are going to have integrity, do the right thing even when it's not popular. That's the truth. And I've seen this in speech contests the last 2 years. I'll never forget it. I was competing in the international division contest. I was at this contest. And I was expecting a drawing, right? So I'm in the briefing room expecting a drawing. I'll never forget the contest chair comes in and says, "Oh, I've already drawn for orders. We did it earlier this morning." And he had his beautiful agenda set up. He had the orders. And I'm thinking, this is against the rules. It says in the rules, you got to have a drawing. And this person is basically saying, I'm not going to follow the rules because it's going to mess up my agenda. This is the way it's going to be. Too bad, so sad if you don't like it. No integrity, no respect for the organization. That's what that told me. And because of the way they do things, they're not an effective leader. Oftentimes their clubs are struggling because this person doesn't want to give up the ranks and wants to lead their way. It's not open-minded to new ideas. It's stuck doing the same old thing with the same old players, expecting different results. It doesn't work that way. Integrity will go a long way. I saw this year, I was even more astonished. I go to this contest, not expecting to do anything. I'm like, oh, if they need someone, I'll step in. And right away, I barely log in and said, "You're going to be a judge." I said, well, "I'm going to be a judge? What do you mean I'm going to be a judge?" "You're going to be a judge." And I'm like, "Well, I think one of my clubs competes. I don't think I could be a judge." Said, "Yeah, you can be a judge. You're going to be a judge." Falling, telling me to do things, not even bother asking me, and breaking the rules. I mean, unless all the clubs are represented, that's against the rule. There was another example I'll never forget. I was a ballot counter. This happened not too long ago. I was a ballot counter, and this person, I'm telling the other ballot counter, okay, since there's two contestants, you know that the contest chair has to state the first place winner first and then followed by second place. Well, you thought I farted in Jesus' face. They're like, "Oh, well, this person decided to do it the other way." I said, "Okay, well, that's not what the rules say." It says, "No, this is the way the person has decided to do it, and that's the way it's going to be." I'm thinking to myself, wow, no integrity, just saying, okay, I don't like that rule, so I'm not going to follow that rule since I don't like it, and I'm just going to do my own thing. That's not respecting the organization. And I'm not just talking about Toastmasters, but if you're breaking rules to favor your needs, it's going to eventually bite you in the butt. I think of one of my cousins who had no shame, and this is about 22 years ago, where she had her mother's debit card. And she's like, "Randy, I need to go to the bank to withdraw money." And I'm thinking it's her debit card. I didn't see that it was my aunt. Just pulling out $20 saying, "Yeah, this is my mom's card," and I'm just pulling it out. Basically stealing from her mom with no shame. No shame. That's not integrity. And if you start to bend the rules, what's going to happen eventually is going to bite you in the butt. If you don't believe me, ask some of those people not too long ago that were arrested, that were millionaires. Some of them were even billionaires in Wall Street, making all that money, living the good life, living in a big, beautiful mansion, driving fancy cars. Well, now what are they doing? They're in jail. They got caught. They went from living in a mansion to living in a cell. They went from eating fancy food to now eating prison food. drinking from a plastic cup each and every day. And it was all because of greed. They were making money doing it the right way. They just weren't making as much. But they started to have that attitude, oh, well, I don't like that rule, so I'm just going to bend it for my needs. And look where they are now. These were people that were considered leaders. Nobody's saying, I want to be a leader like that. I want to be a leader with the guy that's in prison, who's having to spend 20 years in jail because he didn't have integrity. Integrity goes a long ways. People are ready to follow someone with integrity. And that sometimes it's difficult to do the right thing, but I'm telling you, that's what makes a leader rock star. That's what made Abraham Lincoln special. His ability to do the right thing, even when it wasn't popular. Remember, back then, people had slaves. They had slaves like we own cars today. It wasn't popular to free slaves. It wasn't popular to be supportive of African Americans. It wasn't popular back then what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was doing. But look at where they are today. Yes, they're dead. They've been gone for many, many years. But they're still legends. People still talk about them to this day. They're considered effective leaders. We celebrate Dr. King's birthday as a federal holiday. We celebrate Abraham Lincoln, the GOAT of presidents, the greatest president of all time. Even Donald Trump said that he's the greatest president of all time. And if Donald Trump says he's the greatest president of all time, coming from him, you know it's true. Because they use these 5 steps. I believe these. These 5 steps were written in pathways for a reason. They work. They're effective. Doesn't matter what leadership skills you have. You are a leader. You can choose to be an effective leader, to have an impact on your team, whether it's a project in Toastmasters or it's a manager at where you work. Or you can choose to be that leader. All you care about is collecting your paycheck. Nobody matters. Your employees don't matter. Nothing matters except you. You can be that leader, but you're not going to be effective. No one's going to remember you at the end of the day. You're just going to be another person that people talk about. They say, I work for Bob. He's horrible. I don't want to work for Bob. I'd rather work for this person over here who shows 5 steps of leadership, who's effective as a leader, who cares, who's a leader rock star. And that's what it's about. We are dealing with so many issues, like I said before. And I would love to tell you things are going to get better, but they might get worse. And you have to be willing to make those adjustments. We need leaders like you to thrive, succeed, and grow. And the only way that's going to happen if you use these 5 steps. It starts with step 1, be an example. You have to be an example. You have to set the tone as a leader. It starts with communication. Communication is the key to success. Optimistic, being optimistic, looking at the glass half full instead of half empty. Being open-minded to new ideas. Not being stuck doing the same old thing with the same old players and expecting different results. It starts with integrity. We need people to start doing the right thing, following the rules. Look, we're going to make mistakes from time to time. I've made my mistakes, but own up to those mistakes, even as a leader, and you'll get great results. I not only want you to be an effective communicator, I not only want you to be an effective leader, and I not only want you to be a leader rock star, but I want you to use these steps to become the person that you were meant to be. Thank you.